My name is Michael. I'm 27, and some of my strongest childhood memories aren't of school or friends, but of afternoons spent in my grandmother's attic. The place smelled of cedar and dust, packed with boxes and chests stacked higher than I could reach. She'd sit with me up there, her voice low and steady, weaving stories from her past. How she ran away at 16, how she worked 3 jobs to buy her first home, how she believed the true measure of family was what you left behind for them. If you've ever had one person in your family who made you feel understood when no one else did, you'll understand what she was to me. Stay with me, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share in the comments. Who in your family has ever made you feel truly seen? Grandma always had something in her hands when she told those stories. Sometimes it was an old diary, sometimes a brooch, sometimes a jangling set of keys she never explained. More than once, she pressed one of those objects into my hand, holding it there like she was passing me a secret. "One day, Michael," she'd say, "there'll be something here for you. Something to remember me by." I never doubted her. She wasn't the type to make promises she couldn't keep. My parents, though, they never liked our time together. My father said she filled my head with nonsense. My mother said I was getting too attached. Whenever they caught us together in the attic, their voices sharpened. My mother especially was quick to snap. "He doesn't need your old junk, Mother." Grandma would just smile at me after they left, her eyes glimmering. "It's not junk if it carries history," she whispered. When she passed, the house felt empty, stripped of its warmth. My parents handled everything briskly, like it was an errand they were eager to finish. The will was read in a cramped office, the lawyer's voice flat as he listed the distributions. My parents sat with expectant faces as her home, her savings, her jewelry, and her antiques were divided. I sat there waiting for my turn, for the mention of my name. It never came. The lawyer cleared his throat awkwardly. "Michael, your grandmother didn't leave you anything specific." The words rattled in my ears. My parents didn't look surprised. In fact, my mother's mouth curved into something that looked dangerously close to a smirk. I forced myself to nod. I told myself it didn't matter, that memories meant more than money or heirlooms. But deep down, something burned. My grandmother wouldn't have left me nothing. Not after everything she said. After the funeral, while my parents divided her belongings into neat piles, I walked the house one last time. When I reached for the attic door, my mother's voice snapped from the hallway. "Don't bother with that, Michael. It's just clutter." I went anyway. The air upstairs was thick and golden with dust. I opened chest after chest, searching through linens, photo albums, chipped china wrapped in yellowed newspaper. At first, it seemed she really had left nothing behind, until I opened the last cedar chest, the one tucked against the far wall. Beneath a stack of heavy quilts, my hand brushed against an envelope. My name was written across the front in her careful script. My throat tightened as I opened it. Inside was a letter, and beneath the letter, taped firmly to the paper, was a small brass key. I sat cross-legged on the attic floor, the envelope trembling in my hands. The air was heavy with the smell of cedar and mothballs, but all I could focus on was my grandmother's handwriting. She'd always written in neat, looping cursive, the kind that looked like it belonged in old letters tucked between history books. The first line made my chest tighten. "If you're reading this, Michael, then I've gone. And I trust you found this because you knew where to look." Her words pulled me in deeper. "I want you to know that I never forgot my promise. I told you there would be something here for you, and I meant it. This key belongs to a part of my life your parents never care to understand. They will say I left you nothing. Don't believe them. Go to the old oak desk in my study. Unlock the bottom drawer on the left. What's inside belongs to you, and only you." I read the letter 3 times, my fingers tracing the key as though it might vanish. She had left me something important enough to hide, something she didn't trust anyone else with. Downstairs, I heard the muffled sound of voices. My parents were moving through the house, boxing up furniture, speaking in clipped tones. I slipped the letter into my jacket pocket, closing the chest quietly. The study was just down the hall, the door half open. The oak desk stood against the far wall, papers scattered on top, a lamp tilted slightly to one side. My mother had already been in here, that much was clear. I knelt in front of the bottom drawer, my hands shaking as I slid the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, as if waiting for me. Inside, wrapped in cloth, was another envelope, thicker this time, and a small jewelry box. My heart pounded as I pulled them out. The envelope contained documents, neatly clipped together. Legal papers, titles, a will, but not the version we had heard read in the lawyer's office. My name was there, written clearly beside words that didn't match what I had been told. I barely had time to process it before I heard footsteps in the hall. Quick, sharp, coming closer. I shoved the papers in the box into my jacket and closed the drawer just as the door opened. My father stood there, his eyes narrowing. "What are you doing in here?" "Just saying goodbye," I said evenly, forcing my voice calm. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Good. Then let's get moving. There's nothing here for you." I smiled faintly, hiding the weight in my pocket. Nothing here for me. If only he knew. That night, back in my apartment, I locked the door, pulled the blinds, and sat at the kitchen table with the envelope. My hands hesitated on the flap, afraid of what I might find. But the weight of my grandmother's words, the way she had promised me, the way she had hidden this, pushed me forward. The first page was a letter, written in the same careful hand as before. "Michael, if this is in your hands, it means your parents went through with what I feared. They were never content with what they had. I saw it for years, their need to take, to control, to rewrite everything so it served them. I couldn't stop them from trying, but I could make sure they didn't succeed." My throat tightened as I read. "You were the one who listened to me when no one else did. You were the one who understood that a legacy is more than money. It is memory, it is work, it is love. That is why I chose you. Inside this file, you will find the documents they never wanted you to see. Protect them. When the time is right, don't be silent." I set the letter down with trembling hands and opened the rest of the papers. They weren't just trinkets or keepsakes. They were property deeds, a small cabin in the mountains, a parcel of land outside town, even a bank account statement with my name clearly listed as beneficiary. It was more than I ever expected, more than she had ever hinted at. And my parents had looked me in the eye and told me she left me nothing. For a long time, I just sat there staring at the papers, a storm building in my chest. Part of me wanted to storm over to their house and throw the evidence in their faces. Part of me wanted to laugh bitterly at how easily they had lied, how smugly my mother had smirked during the will reading. But mostly, I felt the weight of my grandmother's words. When the time is right, don't be silent. Not yet, I thought. Not now. If my parents wanted a performance, if they wanted to sit there and enjoy the power of telling me I had nothing, then I'd let them. For now, because when I finally revealed the truth, I wanted them to choke on it. I carefully tucked the documents back into the envelope and slid it into a locked box under my bed. The jewelry box still sat on the table, unopened. I lifted the lid slowly. Inside was a locket, simple, silver, a little tarnished. I pressed the clasp, and it opened to reveal two tiny photos. One of my grandmother as a young woman. The other was me, maybe 6 years old, smiling with missing teeth. I closed it gently and slipped it over my neck. Whatever game my parents thought they were playing, it wasn't over. It hadn't even begun. 2 weeks later, my parents announced a family dinner. They called it a way to bring everyone together after the funeral. But I knew them well enough to understand what it really was, a performance. When I arrived at their house, the dining room was already full. Aunts, uncles, cousins, faces I hadn't seen in years. My mother moved among them with a tray of drinks, smiling thinly, while my father stood at the head of the table like a man ready to deliver a speech. Ethan, my older brother, leaned against the wall with a self-satisfied grin, like he was in on a secret the rest of us weren't. Dinner began with polite chatter. My mother clinked her glass, asking for everyone's attention. "It's been difficult losing Mother," she said, "but we find comfort in knowing her affairs were handled properly. The estate has been divided, and we're grateful she trusted us to carry out her wishes." My father nodded solemnly, adding, "It's what she wanted, for everything to stay within the family, in responsible hands." His eyes flicked toward me, sharp, daring me to contradict him. I stayed quiet, eating slowly, my grandmother's locket cool against my skin. Then Ethan spoke, unable to resist. "It's for the best," he said. "Michael knows Grandma didn't leave him anything. She wanted it with people who'd use it wisely." Laughter rippled down the table. My mother smiled, smug and satisfied. My father raised his glass in a mock toast. And I felt it, that tightening in my chest, that heat in my blood. The moment my grandmother had written about. When the time is right, don't be silent. I set my fork down and leaned back, letting my voice cut through the chatter. "That's interesting," I said quietly, "because that's not what she told me." The room stilled. My mother's smile faltered. I reached into my jacket and placed the envelope on the table. I turned toward it. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is the letter she left me, along with documents, deeds, titles, accounts that name me directly. You told me she left me nothing. You lied." Gasps erupted. My aunt leaned forward wide-eyed. My father's face drained of color. Ethan's smirk vanished. I slid the envelope across the table. "She trusted me with this because she knew you'd try to bury it. She knew what you were capable of. And she was right." My mother reached out, her hand trembling. "Michael, don't." I pulled the envelope back before she could touch it. "No, not this time. Everyone here deserves to know the truth. Grandma wanted her legacy remembered, not rewritten." The silence that followed was heavier than any words. My father sat stiff, my mother's lips pressed tight, Ethan glaring at me with fury he couldn't voice. Around the table, my relatives whispered, their eyes darting between me and my parents. I had waited. I had been patient. And now, in front of everyone, their performance had crumbled. The truth was no longer buried in the attic. It was out in the open. No one at the table spoke at first. It was as if the air itself had gone heavy, pinning us all to our seats. My father sat rigid, his knuckles white against his glass. My mother's lips pressed so tight they were almost colorless. Ethan, red-faced, glared at me like I'd stolen oxygen out of his lungs. It was my Aunt Linda who broke the silence. "Michael, is this true?" she asked softly. I slid the envelope back to the center of the table and nodded. "Read it yourself. Grandma left me a letter. She left me deeds, titles, accounts. My name is on every one of them." Linda opened the envelope with shaking hands, scanning the letter first, then the documents. Her brows furrowed. "It's all here," she whispered. "She really did leave this for you." A ripple moved through the table. My cousins leaned forward. My uncle muttered, "So they lied." The room's attention shifted back to my parents. My mother's face flushed. "This is a misunderstanding," she stammered. Mother must have been confused at the end. She didn't mean for this to divide the family." My father tried to steady his voice. "Michael is twisting things. The official will has already been read. That's the only binding document." But Linda shook her head, holding up the papers. "This isn't confusion. This is deliberate. Your mother trusted Michael, and you hid it." My relatives began murmuring, louder now, indignation replacing confusion. I watched my parents shrink beneath the weight of their judgment. For once, they weren't in control. Ethan slammed his hand on the table, his voice rising. "Why him? He didn't deserve it. I'm the one who should have inherited. I'm the one who's always been here." The words were like gasoline on dry wood. My cousins gasped, my uncle glared, my aunt shook her head in disgust. I leaned forward, my voice calm but sharp. "That's exactly why she didn't choose you, Ethan. She knew what you and our parents would do. She knew you'd turn her legacy into a weapon for yourselves. She trusted me because I was the only one who listened." My father tried again to regain control, but the room had already turned. The whispers grew into sharp words, accusations, judgment, disappointment. Every eye that had once looked at them with respect now burned with something closer to contempt. I stood, sliding the envelope back into my jacket. "I don't need to argue with you. I said evenly. The truth is written in her hand. Everyone here has seen it. You can't bury this anymore. I left them sitting in that silence, their reputations unraveling in front of the very people they wanted to impress. Outside, the night air was cool against my skin. I touched the locket at my neck, the one she had left me, and for the first time since her death, I didn't feel heavy with grief. I felt steady. Her legacy was safe, and their lies had burned away under the weight of the truth. If you've ever had to fight to honor someone you loved against the people who should have stood beside you, you'll understand what I felt walking away that night. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and tell me in the comments. What moment do you think my parents realized they'd lost control of the story?